Okay, so hopefully we are live now. My name is Sara Pulido. I work as a developer relations at Datadog. And the reason why I'm doing this short live stream, a week and a half ago, more or less, I did a webinar on auto-scaling workloads in Openshift. And I'll post the link to the recording if anyone is interested. But while I was preparing that webinar, I had to learn a little bit about Openshift security context constraints and where they were and how they work. But I didn't get into specific during that video. So I thought it would be interesting to do a quick introduction of what they are, and we are going to try how you can deploy the Datadog agent in an Openshift cluster using different SCCs and see what features we have depending on the SCC we are using. So let me share my screen. Okay, so for this example, so we are going to be using is Openshift 4.3 on as a service. So we're using IBM Cloud for that. We have let's go to the terminal and let's see. The version is 4.3 that is running Kubernetes 1.16. We can see that we have a single node cluster, so it's acting both as a control plane as worker nodes. So let's explain a little bit, very high level, what SCCs are. So when you're dealing with service accounts and pods in Kubernetes and Openshift, you have to deal with RBAC rules. So give the pod permission to do certain things. But the RBAC rules are specific to the Kubernetes API. So either the standard API or any extensions of the API. So for example, if you want your pod to be able to read config maps, you have to create an RBAC rule for that, etc. Security context constraints, or SCCs, it's more about what a pod can do, what the process can do that is not related to the Kubernetes API. So basically, that would be rules about whether they can be root or not, whether they can be a privileged container, whether they can read the host network, so whether also about security, so the SE Linux rules that they have, or the Linux capabilities, etc., etc. So it's very similar to pod security policies. But the difference is that Openshift creates this new object called SCC and also enforces it. So this is by default on any Openshift cluster. You will have a set of SCCs that we are going to see, and your pods are going to need to run against one of those. So let's go back to the terminal and let's see what we have by default. Okay, so these are the SCCs that we have by default in this particular cluster. So we see some of them are specific to us running on an IBM cloud, but the most important ones, or the default ones, for example, is restricted. Let's quickly have a look to what's inside. So as you can see, the list of users, or that can include service accounts, the list of users that can run with these SCCs is empty. That means that any pod will run with this one if they cannot add a more extended one. So this is the full one, and it has some details about what type of volumes can it have, that it has to run as a range of user ID. So it won't be able to run as root. It won't be able to access the host network or host ports, etc., etc. So anything that you run by default is going to run against this restricted. So one of the good things about Openshift for this is that from an admin point of view, they don't have to create all these pod security policies to start with. Openshift already provides with this, so they know that if a user wants to run whatever pod in their clusters, they will go with this restrictor SCC by default. So the question is, if we only have access to this one, are we able to run Datadog? So yes, but with limited features. So I have the Datadog agent to run on a cluster runs as a daemon set. So every node will have its own Datadog agent. And we can see that we have a secret that we have already created to access to our account in Datadog. And for this, we are going to be able, if we only add this, the service account is Datadog Agent. So our pod is going to run with the Datadog Agent service account. And we're going to be able to access the information that the kubelet provides. So very metrics about for example, the number of CPU, memory that our pods are requesting, etc., etc. So let's try that. And let's add this one first, which is the more restricted one. So the Datadog agent is created. Let's see. Let's wait a second. By the way, the other pods that are running here, it's a default e-commerce application that we can see here while this is running. It's very basic. It's just a Spree application with some couple of Flask microservices, but it's going to give us something that is running on our cluster to see the different features from Datadog. So right now we don't have any matching host because it's going to take a second while this is running. Let's see what we said before. Let's describe this pod. And you can see that it's running with the restricted SCC. So we were able to run the Datadog agent running on the default SCC. So hopefully at some point this will start gathering data. So not yet, it will take a while. Let's see how this is running. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run the agent status command to see that everything is running correctly. So it's already providing some metrics, so it should be sending the metrics at some point. Not sure what's going on here. Okay, let's see. Okay, this is our host, so it's up. So you can see we have started to get some metrics about the system itself, so the host, so CPU usage, memory, etc. If we go to the metrics explorer, we can check some of the metrics that are provided by the kubelet itself, so the number of CPU requests that we have in our cluster. But actually we don't, if we go back to the infrastructure and we check containers. We don't have any containers, and actually, if we see the container list here, it says no agents reporting, and if we go to APM, we have no services. So we don't have access to things like the information that Docker provides, or APM or distributed tracing. So what do we need to do to add those features? So let's start by APM. So the APM agent, what it does in Kubernetes and Openshift is to get a host port to send the trace data to it, and obviously our agent needs to be able to read that host port. So let's do that quickly. So how we can do this? Again, if we have the list of SCCs, there is one that is called host network that if we read it, we will see that the only difference that we have with the restricted one is that it has access to the host network. So if we add the Datadog agent to this particular SCC, we are going to be able to enable APM. So let's do that. To avoid I'm going to copy and paste, for example, from privilege, so that I know there is a list of to get the right format. So this is not the service account that I need, but I just want to make sure that I have the right. So let's edit the host network one. And let's say that in the Datadog namespace, the service account Datadog agent is going to be able to access to this particular one. So let's delete the agent. And let's apply a different one. Let's apply the one that we know is going to be able to access the host network. You don't have to change anything on this definition in terms of service accounts. Openshift is going to check which one is able to access. So there is no reference here to the host network SCC. But one of the things that we have done is enable APM, that we know we needed host network for it. And as you can see a couple of host ports, one for doc-start-d and one for traces. So obviously, if we try to apply this particular one when we haven't added to the host network SCC, we would get an error. So let's try applying that one. Let's wait a little bit. While we wait, I'm going to open some documentation. On this documentation, you can see on the Datadog documentation, you can see what things you have access to depending on the SCC that you're applying. So if you have doubts of what type of SCC you need to apply depending on the features that you want to see, you can check the documentation. So hopefully this is up and running. Let's run again status to see that everything is fine. Everything seems to be fine. So let's check. Let's go back to Datadog. And at some point, this will start getting traces from our system because we are providing regular traffic. Okay, so we are starting seeing the traces going in. So thanks to this new SCC, we have access to a new feature, which is distributed tracing. So we can see here all the different traces that we see on our application. And we can have access also to things like the service map, where we can get the information about the services that we are running. Cool, but again, if we try to see container and process information, we still see this no agents reporting. Why? Because for that, we need to have access to the Docker socket. And with the SCC that we currently have, we don't have access to that yet. So let's do that. So for that, if we go to the documentation, if we want to have all those features, Datadog provides a custom SCC that you have to apply. So it's not, you don't have to go for the privileged one. So the privileged SCC is not recommended to be used for anything. So the first thing that we are going to do is going to edit back. Well, first we are going to delete Datadog Agent. And we are going to edit back the SCC, the host network one, to remove the agent again from here. So we have removed it that way. And we are going to apply the custom SCC that we are going to see here. So this is one that Datadog has created. You can see that it's documented on the YAML itself, so you know exactly why we are applying those things. For volumes is the same except for the host path, and we have included the user Datadog agent already. We have host ports, for example. We have some rules for the Docker socket for SC Linux. We have the run as any, which is going to allow us to run it as root. I think this is because we have it that way because we need to access some folders in the host for the Docker information that are owned by root. I think that it would be possible, I don't know, I have to check with the team. I think it might be possible to also run only as non-root, but as part of the root group. But for now, it's like that. So let's apply that one. So if we get the list of SCCs, now we have a new one, which is the Datadog agent. We have seen that we have already the Datadog agent user there. So we are going to apply the last one of the Datadog agents Devon said definitions. Everything as the previous one, we have APM enabled with the different host ports. But aside from that, we are mounting the in this case CRI socket. So we make sure that we have access to all the container information, logs, etc. We have enabled as well login here, so we are going to be able to have logs as well. So let's apply that one. But let's see the pod. Let's wait until it creates. And while we do that, let's describe the pod to make sure that it's going to be running against this new SCC that has access to everything. So this is a good way to, when you're debugging, to make sure that your pod is actually running on against the SCC that you want. Okay, let's see if we start having information. Probably it's going to take a while. Let's see, for example, processes. So right now it's not collecting that information, probably it's not running yet, or it's just started to run. Let's check the agent status. Okay, logging works. So this is all the logs from all the, we have tell it to basically get any log, which is a lot. But hopefully, yeah, it's collecting data from the container runtime. So yeah, now we start seeing all the data. If we go to the containers page, we are able to see all the different pods that are running, all the containers that are running inside our pods, with all the different processes that are running, the memory that they're using, etc., etc. So this is, if you want to have access to everything in Datadog in your Kubernetes cluster, all the visibility to your cluster and your workloads, the best way is that either you're the cluster administrator or you talk to your cluster administrator to apply this new SCC. So we have access to all the information, including the Docker and CRI information. So that's it. I wanted to do a short live stream on how this SCC works. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to my Twitter account or comments. I'm going to post also the link to the webinar about the scaling workloads that I mentioned. And that's it. Hopefully you learned something today. Bye.